Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Mara Gittleman. I am the Workshops and Education Coordinator for NYC Parks GreenThumb. We are the part of the New York City Parks Department that works with community gardens across the city. And we're so excited to be here tonight with Sheryll and Heather, who are going to talk to us about record keeping and data collection in urban gardens and community gardens. So thank you both so much for being here tonight and for sharing your knowledge with us. Also here with my colleague, Elena Dubis from GreenThumb, who is going to be keeping track of all the questions that you put in the chat. So if you have any questions throughout Sheryll and Heather's presentation, you can go ahead and put them there. We're going to keep track of them until it's time for Q&A. We are recording tonight's webinar and we'll make it available on our website and YouTube channel. And we'll have the camera focused on the speakers, but you can decide whether your camera is on using the little camcorder icon at the bottom of your screen. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. We're really excited to have this conversation with you. And so without further ado, I pass the mic to Heather.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. This is actually a part 2 of a webinar that was done earlier that was about info seeking. And that was done by the librarians at the New York Botanical Gardens here in the Bronx. And so this is almost part 2 in that now we're the gardeners who are going to talk to you about record keeping and data research. And I know, like we've all been in New York, or most of you, and I think Chicago is just as hot. I heard that someone's from Chicago. So I'm going to just add a disclaimer right now. I've got 2 dogs in the air-conditioned room with me. They've been really quiet, but that means Murphy's Law. As soon as I start talking and we get into it, they may start whining. Yeah, so Mara said, I'm Heather Warren-Dombrowa, and you can see, oh, I guess I should have put it like to my, but Sheryll Durrant is here as well. I'm from Urban Cultivated, as well as Bissel Gardens, which is a garden in the Northeast Bronx, And then Sheryll, who will well, actually, Sheryll, why don't I just have you?
Hi, everyone. Glad to see you all here today. I'm Sheryll Durrant. I am an urban farmer and community gardener in the South Bronx, working out of Kelly Street Garden and New Roots Community Farm. And we're talking today about data collection, and I am part of the farming concrete crew that does community outreach and engagement.
Okay. All right, so I just realized that I hadn't shared. I hadn't clicked the share button. So we've gone through that. So we have a question for you, and that is, please share your current method of garden record keeping. And yeah, I believe, Mara, we're going to have everyone do responses in the chat.
Yes, if you answer in the chat, I will read your response out loud.
Okay, and I just want to say, as I've added on the slide, all responses are good responses. So don't think that, oh, even if you don't, you can share some of that. There's always a reason. There's always good stuff. Okay.
Someone says Excel, but it's messy.
Oh, messy's good. We're gardeners. Anyone else? No one else? Okay. Is it that no one else is record keeping yet, or are we shy at the moment? Okay.
If you're not record keeping, it would be good to know also.
Right, right. So that way.
Spreadsheet of seeding and planting dates.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm going to get a little formal in the beginning. And that is, I always kind of feel like we always start off, explain what it is that we're talking about, even though we all assume we know. So what is record keeping, right? If you look in a dictionary, it's the act or process of creating and maintaining records and archiving, right? Really dry. Or the other one that I found was, it's the act of keeping track of the history of a person's organizations, activities, generally by creating and storing consistent formal records, right? And I want to stress that little part there, the formal records. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from actually being involved and taking up the task of record keeping. We all kind of go, yeah, that's good. It's something we should do, but then a lot of times it seems overwhelming and overbearing to actually get started. Sorry. So what I want to share with people is that it doesn't have to be that formal, and it doesn't have to feel as dry as that text sounded, right? There's a variety of ways, a variety of reasons that you would record keep, and that's some of the things that Sheryll and I are going to discuss here today. But the idea behind it all is that you can make it a fun experience, and you can make it what you need it to be. Okay, so we have why bother with record keeping and what are the benefits? And I am saying it's a hot day, it's a dry day, so we're going to be interactive. So a lot of times when I have a question, I'm expecting some feedback. So tell me, why bother with record keeping? And especially if you didn't answer the first time, now's your time. No one? Not one? Because then I'm gonna have to throw it to Sheryll or Mara. And
I'll jump in. For me, it's nice because I like to look back on what we did this year. Someone says to keep things on track, helps you track progress.
Anything else?
I get sentimental. So I like seeing at the end of the season what we've done.
Yes.
Stay organized and informative, to understand what growing strategies failed or worked, for watching the process and to compare to the next planting.
Okay, that's some good stuff. And you've got me. So here's some of the things that I also want to point out, that, and this is something that Mara alluded to, it's to recognize patterns. Oh, well, I should say to recognize patterns in the garden cycle, right? So a lot of times, some of the things that we're recording isn't so much for the immediacy of that year, or this, I should say, this current season, but over time, it's, if we have records to look back to, right? Mara mentioned being nostalgic, but there's also that idea of nostalgia of just being able to look back and gain and learn from it. So if there's, like, I can share that we at Bissel Gardens, we plant serrano peppers for the Bronx hot sauce. And as we're planting each year, we actually try to sketch out where in the garden we're planting and why do we do that. And where we're planting other things like other nightshade plants like eggplants, tomatoes, other types of peppers, whether they're hot peppers or sweet peppers. And why do we do that? Because, as we learn more about gardening, we also realize that you don't want to always grow things in the same place, right? You want to be able to rotate things a little bit. And sometimes when you have small gardens, that's not an easy thing to do. So I know for us for a few years, we had John Amoroso, and he would say, from the Cornell extension, he'd say, oh, just add some compost and turn it really well and give it some more, organic fertilizer, and you should be okay. But what we did realize is that after a while, we'd sit there and go, so how long have we been doing this? If we needed to, and we always underestimate. So even in looking at that, we realized, oh, wait, we've done it X amount of years now. And even when we shifted, we were shifting, but we also had to take into account that we were also growing lots of other nightshade plants. So even though we were shifting, we weren't really getting the true benefits of getting another area, right? So that allowed us to really look back and say, okay, you know what? We need a virgin soil area right now. And that we were able to see what bugs were we were dealing with. Were the petals coming out on time? If they weren't one year, we already knew for the next year, oh, we're gonna want to, what do we use? We use actually Epsom salts and watered down and diluted and sprayed. I have a dog here, of course. What did I say? And being able to utilize that. If there was a certain pest that was minor, we kind of also knew that, okay, we can probably do this one more year. We're going to have to look into other solutions for those pests, but then be be very weary, right, of even determining when we planted things. So something like even zucchini, which in our lovely area, we can get the squash worms really easily. So in recording what we're doing, what we've done is try to gauge, oh, okay, well, when we planted it later, and maybe the fact that we planted it later was just because we were overwhelmed with the season and we didn't have time. But we realized from recording it that, oh, when we planted it that year later, we didn't get the squash worm. So wait, maybe now we want to implement that. Maybe we'll start with some, and in that way we might have to do row covers, but then maybe we'll seed another crop and be able to use that and hopefully not get that pest, right? So again, I've already talked about the memory assist, that not relying on yourself, because there's a lot going on in the garden, especially through year to year, our seasons change. But even being able to determine how the weather even affected, that's some of the things that I'll record, is how the weather was that season. That sometimes we have very rainy summers, and that will give you some results, as opposed to next summers when we have very extremely hot heat waves right now in June. And so we know to allocate for those actions. And again, the last thing would be, it's a time saver, right? Once you actually get into the habit, and that's always key, getting into the habit. Once you get into the habit and you choose your system, what you'll start to realize is that you can fall back to those habits and what you were doing. You can fall back and kind of gain a little more pace into the season. Right?
I think those responses that people gave are very good. And for me, it all boils down to the reason why I collect data is because I really want to learn the impact or observe the impact of the work that I do on many, many different levels. Regardless, it could be how much food I grow. It could be how much community engagement is involved. And like you said, Heather, it's about crop planning. If I record where I'm growing things and at what time of the year, then I begin to see patterns. Where is the sun mostly? Where should I plant my fruiting crops? Where is there the most concentration of pests? Where do I need to top up my nutrients? But in determining impact of the garden, then I know what, going back to determining impact of the garden, then I'll be able to ascertain really and truly what is the work that I do. Because what data collection can say to you, it can actually give you a clear picture of exactly what is the work that you do. You might think that the work that you do is growing food, but maybe through different methods that you implement within your garden through data collection, you actually find out that what you really do is community engagement, that you're really very good at that, and maybe that's where your focus should be. And it can be for many, many different reasons. It can be for the demographic in your community, it can be for the different programming that you have on site. So then you'll be able to gauge every season, how do I structure my programming? How do I structure work? How do I determine what my focus or focuses will be for that year? So for me, overarchingly, I collect data because I really want to know what is the true work that I am doing and what is the true impact of the work that I have on my community.
Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, so just make sure. So in this regard, it's, what does this look like for gardeners? And again, I think this is where someone mentioned, oh, they have an Excel sheet, but it's messy, right? But really the idea is, there's so much ways that we think of recording, and all of it works. Really, it's about finding a system that works for yourself as an individual home gardener, or if it's community gardeners, finding ways, and sometimes it's more than one way, that works for the bulk of the community gardeners, right? The goal is to get people into just jotting it down, right? And it doesn't even have to be that it's all done one way. You can actually use a hybrid of methods. So right now I'm just gonna, reel off what I have here. So it can be charts, it can be journals, right? If you look back to the Victorian age, garden journals were something that were just an art piece, right? So that's one of the things I'm going to tell you, that if you ever go to the Botanical Garden, oops, sorry, that's something that you can look into. The whole idea of the Victorian age is like people, they drew. They didn't just, you know, have, like right now, we just kind of take a snapshot, a photo, right? If we want to do a photo journal, you can take a snapshot like this and have, and then write your notes to the corner. You can sketch as they did, right? It can be as simple as a pencil sketch and as elaborate as a watercolor. But it really is just something that engages yourself and your community, and your volunteers even at the garden. You can even have, when you're at the community gardens, if you think about it, you know, people always think, oh, well, I don't garden. Well, there might be an artist who, like, that's the way they're going to contribute, right? Maybe no one wants to do it, but this person's like, oh yeah, I'll draw it out and put the notes and put it together, no big deal. So that's also a way that you can actually engage the members as well as the volunteers to your garden and really get an interactive activity. We have the electronic documents, anywhere from Excel sheets to pages, if you're on a Mac, to using Google Docs, right? If you're using Google Docs and you use either the Google Docs or Google Sheets, now you can also implement getting your community gardeners and your volunteers to join in the responsibility, right? You can say, oh, okay, well, maybe you just send a reminder and say, okay, you know, don't forget, here's the link, add in what you did this week or this month, whatever you think that people are going to manage on their own. It can be, again, the best device we have, right, for the 21st century are our cell phones, right? Who would have thought that we were always going to be walking around with our own personal camera? And things that the camera does is it collects metadata. So some of the information that you're going to get on your slide is what am I saying? Oh, it's like some of the things that will correlate into I'm trying to think of the word. When it uploads, okay, when it uploads into wherever you're storing or housing your pictures, it usually will say where it was. It'll say the date. Sometimes it'll even give you, I know my prep program will give me a little map of where it is too. So if I forgot to take notes on it, you know, I might not have all the information, but all of a sudden I can go back and just pull the information from that, right? And that's something that you can have kids do, right? You can say, oh, take pictures and then put little notes in, and then someone else will put it together. A simple notebook, nothing goes wrong with just having, you know, a composition notebook that you're just going to jot things down into. Oh, that's funny. I had written your phone camera and didn't realize it. So your phone camera again. Even mobile apps, right? There are a number of mobile apps. Some are free, some will charge, that you can utilize either there's Picture This, and where you can utilize just to even find the information of what you're growing and get a little bit of information as to how to care for plants. But there are also mobile apps that are all about recording and journaling what's going on. So if that's something where people are more comfortable with doing things on their phone, and these days that's an increasing number of people, then you let them do that. And then there's even flashcards, right? I mean, oh my gosh, is that jumping back into the other century? You know, having little note cards, and you basically punch a hole and put it on a ring. And that way it's very accessible, it's very mobile. You can bring it with you, you can drop it in your bag. You don't have to think about the portability of it. In this picture here, he's got a tablet that works as well. Okay. So here, I'm hoping you can kind of see this. Can you see this? Can you see it okay?
It's a little small for folks who are on a computer. There's a little slidey bar between the thumbnail videos and the shared screen, and so you can move that to make the shared screen bigger.
And I'm wondering if I don't think there's any way for me to make it bigger, right?
I'm not gonna share.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this quickly as we now have some feedback in here. And this is just my, I took some of what I had. If you see in the corner here, this is from my journal book for my home garden from 2002. And I was just noting down just, every things that I was doing. I was noting down the weather, just everything that then for the next few years, I always referred back to it. And I did it through the months, usually starting in April, because I always thought I was late. And then I would go back to my journal and see, oh, no, this is when I started. So we're all good. But the key is always getting information down. So as I was saying, a notebook. This was 2018. 2018, this is for garden stuff. And this was me just actually recording our seed chart. We start early in the year at a greenhouse. And so what all of this was really just getting the information down. We were writing down the day of just to let you know what I'm recording, the dates, the day you're doing it, and like maybe when it sprouted, right? Or the lot date of the seed packet. As I went on, what I would tell you is that the next year, I think I added in the days to germination. Prior to that, on the side here, I had handwritten in even the lot, I think what I said, because we actually had seeds that we didn't want to let go of. And we knew they were old, but we didn't want to let go of them. So we started to track if they were actually giving us products. I'm going to interrupt in one moment and let her out. But if they were actually giving us seeds, right? Was it worth our time and energy? Yeah, we wanted to hold on to these things, but it might not have been worth all of that energy. So by the time I got to here, we're putting in the lot year, we're putting in the days to germinate. And that was just all because we were starting to do more. It was our way of, hold on 1 minute. I'm so sorry. Sheryll, can you step in? And I'm just gonna let her out. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought Sheryll. Okay, sorry about that. So along with this now, what I would say is that then we started adding in days to maturity. And so this was all so that we had it right front center, right? It's easily accessible. It's a paper document. This was actually done in pages. And so that's what I was telling, where different people could do different things. We had this formally done in pages. I will show you the next year, where you would think 2020, well, we all know how that went. And I was like, oh, I've got this all in a system. It's gonna be perfect. So this is what it ended up looking like. It was still all filled in. If you notice back here, everything was in the computer. I used to bring the tablet in and type it right in. And for 2020, I was just like, you gotta be flexible, okay? And I can tell you that this sheet is actually what this sheet ended up looking like by the end of the year, because literally I would fold it up, I would stick it in my pocket, I would throw it in my bag. It was just, it was what 2020 was, and that was being flexible. And so this year for 2021, I didn't really know what was gonna happen, right? So I ended up buying this planner, right? It was a little planner. I said, okay, I'm just gonna get it. And I'll keep it in my bag. And so again, I just already knew, I don't know what it was, that I wasn't going to be that formal about the Excel sheet at the moment. And so ideally, I think when I got it, it was simply about tracking our volunteers and how much time I was putting in to both Bissel and to Urban Cultivated, and tracking, because I learned from Sheryll, tracking the hours that our volunteers are coming to us. And so that, later on when you're writing grants, if you're part of a community garden, you can share that knowledge and that information. But again, it ended up being that at the back of this planner, there were blank pages. And so this is where this year's seed chart lays. And it actually has worked fine, right? It's worked fine for me. So let's skip on, because we're looking at the time. So again, I'm going to ask the question, what should you be recording? right? I gave you a little bit of ideas that were really just rooted in seed charts and when you're and crop planning and what you're doing. But give me some ideas. I've listed some prompts right here, whether it's before planting, whether it's during the season, whether it's after the season. What are some of the things that you should be reporting? No one?
Let's give folks like 30 seconds to answer.
Okay.
They have to think, Heather.
What? You don't have the answer sheet right here?
Cultivars you like.
Mhm.
Okay, yes. What about before? Well, I kind of told you. What about after the season? Oh, here we go.
We record the name, the seedling date, when it germinates, how many days to harvest, and the actual date to harvest.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we probably have an idea of the before planting, right? And that's just what I believe Elizabeth was sharing, in the sense of when you're starting to do those seedlings and getting all of that stuff in. Even you can go, once you've done that and you know when things are going to be ready to transplant. The other things, you don't always think of it as recording, but things like your crop plan, right? So sketching out where things are going to go, knowing the spacing already so that you know what to maybe companion plant together, so that it makes it a little easier when you're going to go into the garden now and you have volunteers. You can already share. It's a little bit faster, and that's the time saver that I was mentioning earlier. You can already say, hey, we're going to put this here. We're going to put 15 beets here and 20 carrots here. Over in this section, we'll do this. We're going to have trellises over here for the beans. These are the beans that will go here. We'll intercrop them with X and Y. And so just knowing that ahead of time allows you to speed up the process once we get into the season. Because if you compare the season like this year, we started out really nice and mild at the end of April and the beginning of May. It was great. Then all of a sudden we had all these rainy days followed by some heat wave weather, and again with the rain. So all of a sudden you find yourself losing time, especially when you're very dependent on the availability of volunteers, right? Say during the season, even I think I mentioned it before, whether it's the type of weather that's happening, the any insect damage that's happening throughout the area, any I don't want to say pests, but lovely animals that come to share your garden. Last year we were blessed with lots and lots of squirrels that ate all of our eggplants, and the ones that they didn't like, they actually threw at us. So that was always, we very well noted that. So you just want to have an idea of what to do during and what to do next. Anyone have any input in saying what else that you can record during the season? Okay, so you're going to learn a little bit more about the during the season from Sheryll. So I won't go too much into it, but I can tell you that for us, we also take note of how many volunteers are coming in and coming to the garden, and just even what we're planting when, because even I can tell you that having my notes from the past years, I realized that although I would get those serrano peppers early, inevitably I would end up like not planting them until the end of May or the beginning of June, So this year we really made a concerted effort to, when we had our volunteers and when we scheduled them in, we were just like, okay, this is going to be Serrano Pepper Day. Who's interested in that? And that's how we got people. Oh yeah, I want to be part of that project. I've never been able to see when you do that. And we didn't realize that that was of interest, right? So that's something that we've noted down and that we'll keep as part of our ritual going forward. After the season, what do you think that you want to do there? You know,
Someone noted that during the season, they record their water scheduling and the number and weight of harvest, as well as succession plantings.
Exactly. So again, if you have those records already, especially with succession planting, you can already not only note when you're doing the succession planting, but also as in I would even say that prior to that, you can start looking at the calendar, right? You're knowing how your season is. You know what you put in. You know what's coming. You can map all of that out and have that going. I love the idea of the harvest, because that is of recording the harvest. That is something that is so important, especially as urban farming and urban agricultural communities, especially here in New York. You know, we always want to share, like there's so much effort right now going into growing our own food. We want to be able to share those numbers, right? Community gardeners will do it for projects. I know we'll do it for the certain projects that we're doing. We have the Bronx Community Farm Hub, so we're recording the harvest for that. We've got the Bronx hot sauce with the Serrano peppers, but it's still something that we have to regularly kind of encourage our gardeners, our regular annual gardeners, to say, hey, you know, even the stuff that's just for your own use, or that you're sharing with your family and friends, if you could record that, you know, being able to say that we create and harvest, you know, 1,000 pounds of, and being able to list the variety of produce that's being planted is so rich, right? It gives a fuller picture of what's really going on in our cities.
So just a quick time check. We have 10 minutes left before it's time for Q&A, and I want to make sure we get to Sheryll's piece as well.
Yeah, so we're coming right up on that. So the other question right now is following up, is just when should you implement the system? And really, I would say ideally, it's from the very beginning, but we all know, let's be realistic, right? So the reality of it all is introduce it as you need it. You can start small, you can start simple, you can start comfortable, right? As I mentioned before, you can do hybrids, and it doesn't have to be this perfect system for it to be beneficial. And then what I would say is that you add as you garden and as your creativity grows, as you start to maybe pull in just not the regular tomatoes and green peppers and onions and things like that you're growing, but as you start to pull in the variety of heirlooms, and you're really starting to really fall in love into what our earth can do for us, you track and record accordingly with that information, because that is the information. Sharing that information becomes the gold, right? So I am going to then our next, sorry. Oops. Sorry about that, hold on. So right now, we have available to us, and for all gardeners, this online platform called Farming Concrete. And Sheryll is going to share more information about what that is and what it can do for us.
So I'm a big fan of Farming Concrete. I've been a fan of Farming Concrete since I was part of the focus group that helped, helped to roll it out. And the reason why I'm a fan of Farming Concrete is that this platform was developed by and for community gardeners. Heather talked about data collection around, developing a crop plan so that you know what you're growing, when you're growing it, and when you're harvesting. And then one of our participants, I think it was Elizabeth, talked about actually measuring, the proceeds of that crop plan, how much harvest you have accumulated or aggregated for the season. And Heather talked about how important, that particular type of metric is, because it can show the impact of the work you do around growing food for your community, especially now that we have food hubs, especially around food insecurity as a result of COVID, etc. So I think since we are crunched for time, I think the best way to go about this is to actually have a brief demonstration of what farming concrete is. And why I love it and why I encourage people to use this free flat platform that is readily available to measure the impact of their work. Okay. How many people have heard of farming concrete, have used it before? Maybe you can put that in the chat while I set this up. Are you still using it? Have you stopped using it? Anybody?
Someone says they've heard of it, but not used it.
And
Is it Sheryll?
Yep, looks good.
All right, okay. So Farming Concrete is a data collection platform. It is free to everybody. It is online. You can see it equally good on your computer screen, on your phone, on your laptop, on your tablet. And one of the first things that I would recommend, because I would not be able in the time short span to give you a full tutorial on Farming Concrete, is to access the Farming Concrete data collection toolkit. It is an excellent walkthrough of what Farming Concrete is, the metrics that are available to measure the good things that happen in your garden, as we always say, and to give you an idea of what is the best way to introduce this to your gardeners, to your community, and how to actually use each metric. And you can download the entire booklet, or you can scan through it and select metrics that you think are applicable to your community garden or urban farm, and just download that portion and use it. The next good thing is the tab called Barn. And Barn is actually where individual community gardeners can put in their data. I've already logged on to Kelly Street's page to make it easier. But if you see here, you can see an overview of how Farming Concrete has been used so far. We have 442 gardeners recording data right now in 107 cities. So far, we have aggregated over 154,000 pounds of food and over 22,000 pounds of compost. And for Kelly Street Garden, one of the gardens that I work with, we use it extensively. Once you register your garden, and once, as Heather says, you select the person or the person in your garden who will be most likely to jump on something like this, do data collection. Once you register your garden and you have an account online with Farming Concrete, then you just can begin to use it. It is so simple to use. It doesn't require much other than going through the website, going through the booklet. You can literally do it on your own. But if you do have questions, I am encouraging you to reach out to me, and I will gladly answer them. My computer is very slow. I'm waiting for it to load. I'm sorry about that.
Sheryll, while it's loading, can you do a quick overview of like what options you have for different metrics? Oh, there it is.
There it is. So on the main screen, to enter data, you have all these different metrics, and I'll just go through them quickly. Food production data, which Elizabeth mentioned, is that they do at their garden. You are not only able to do a crop count, that is what crops you're growing and where you're growing them, but you're able to do a harvest count. And you can do it for any part of the season. You can choose like the high point of your season to just give yourself an idea of how much food you're growing, or you can do it throughout the entire season. And it's a simple tool. You just add data for the harvest count. You select, there's a drop-down menu. Most of the crops that we grow in the urban gardens are there, or you can enter a new crop. If it's not there, you put the date in which the crop was harvested. If you have more than one gardener who is administering farming concrete, you drop down their name. You drop down the names of the plants, like say peppers, you put in peppers, it comes up, assorted peppers, banana peppers, whatever peppers. The crop variety, if you want to be that distinct, how much it weighs, if you want to be even more detailed, the plant area that you planted it and how many square feet of that crop you planted, and you submitted it and it is recorded. And as you continue to add the different harvests throughout the season, it aggregates the total. So far for 2021 season, we have harvested 158 pounds of produce. In 2020, during COVID, I think we did like 1,300 total for the entire season. We did over 1,300 pounds of food for Kelly Street Garden. The other metrics that we have, we have also environmental data. If you're a site that collects compost, you have many different ways of measuring compost. You can do diversion waste by volume or by weight. And if you actually sift and weigh your compost and bag it, and you want to know how much compost you have produced from the landfill waste that you have added to your compost bins or your tumbler, you can do that by volume or weight as well. There's also rainwater harvesting, but I don't. That's another metric that will take me a much longer time to go through. So I'm going to move on to social data, and this is what Heather was talking about when she says you're able to measure community engagement. You can measure it according to geography, or by task, or by project, or by skills and knowledge in the garden, or by the reach of your programs. So you have many different ways in which you can tap into how your social data and how your community members are engaging with your data. There's health data. You can a fun metrics that I like to use. Changes in attitude in the garden. The yum and yuck is one of my favorite because we engage a lot of kids. So you can use this particular metric to engage. What is the response to vegetables when kids first start to engage in gardening, and then what is the response after they have been engaged in gardening? So is it a yum or a yuck? It's a very fun tool. Good moods in the garden. I used to use this a lot when people come into the garden. They will stick a post-it on a board. I'm feeling good today, or I'm feeling lousy today, and test their mood when they're leaving. Healthy eating habits could also include developing recipes for your garden, and testing how people's eating habits have changed being engaged in the garden. Beauty in the garden. How many flowers you have? How many nativars you have? How does it, how do people see the garden from an aesthetic standpoint? And this is another metric that we like to use is market data. When Heather was talking about the small acts growing serrano peppers for small acts, this is where we normally would put our data. So we would list the product, how many units, I think Small Axe Pepper sells purchases peppers from community gardens for $4 a pound. So you are able to track how many pounds of peppers you have grown throughout the year and what to expect in your total revenue from sales to Small Axe Peppers. We also do emergency food distribution. So we donate a lot of shares to community members because through the Nourish New Year program. So we track since COVID. So we track what our donations have been so far. And so far this year, we have donated 24,000 pounds of food through the Nourish New Year program. So this is like a basic overview of farming concrete. It's already there. It's already set up for you. There is a toolkit that you can actually access that will give you a full tutorial on how to use the site. You don't need to use every single metric that's available. Choose the one that you think is more appropriate for your garden. And then as you become more familiar with the platform, you can then begin to add the different metrics that you think, just to test out or to see, is my garden engaged in this way? Do we have an impact on this particular type of aspect of our work? And also, you're not obligated to use the toolkit for the entire season. You might choose a part of the season that you wanna or a certain aspect of the season that you wanna measure, because you wanna see, what the work is, or really assess what is the real work that you're doing. Another thing that makes me a big fan of Farming Concrete is that you can download all this data. It's right there at your fingertips. It's recorded. So if I'm writing a grant, I don't need to have to figure out, where my data is coming from. If for instance, I'm writing for emergency food fund money, I can say, we donated during this period of time, this amount of food to this many families. And that's why we're applying for this grant. So you can download spreadsheets, you can download pie charts. The data is there at your fingertips, and and because you're inputting this data on a regular basis or for a specific time period, you don't have to, and it's all there in one platform. You don't have to second guess yourself about where you're gonna get your data from to actually, write your grants or present figures for your grants. And another thing that I can use it for is when my elected official comes to my garden, or I'm reaching out to my elected official, if say I want to, apply for discretionary funding, I have this data to say, this is the work that I'm doing in my garden. This is the impact that I'm having on my community. And I've recorded it, and I have the proof. I can show it to you. So that's my encouragement for, doing data collection. It actually, solidifies the work that you do. It actually proves to not only your grantors, not only to your elected officials, but if as an activist, you are championing the cause of community gardens and why they are relevant to communities. This is why I encourage community gardeners, urban farmers to engage in some practice of data collection. Any questions?
So you may have already touched on this. There was a question about, are the metrics preset?
Hold on, in the chat. Let me stop sharing for a sec. Yes, here I am. Are the metrics preset, meaning? That's a question.
I think
yeah, I would say that the metrics are preset. What I showed you are the metrics that are available on site, with harvest count, whether it's diversion of landfill or measuring compost. The metrics that we have on the platform is what is available. However, our goal is to update the platform, so we are moving towards Farming Concrete 2.0, which we'll be reaching out to community gardeners sometime this year. We want to hear what it is community gardeners, besides what is already on the platform, they'd like to see. We'd like to also, reach out to the community gardeners that have engaged this platform to see if after using it for a while, if there are any other changes they would like to see, what they would like to that would make it more usable for them. And if they haven't used the platform in a while, why haven't they? And if they have recommendations for improving the platform that will get them back on using it as well. So yes, if there are, so stay tuned for that.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Please let GreenThumb know when you're reaching out to community gardeners, and we can help spread the word.
Definitely.
So we just had a couple questions. The other one, which you've already shared, are there any other programs besides this one that you suggest for recording? And I don't know why you would use another one, but that was.
I'm so biased to it. When Mara introduced me to Farming Concrete, I was like, this is so amazing. I am like so biased towards Farming Concrete. It is so user-friendly, so easy to use that, I champion it everywhere I go. I mean, USDA has some data collection platforms that you can use, but I don't use them. They're not as easy as this and not as user-friendly.
And I think that's what's important. It's the user friendliness of the platform at the moment that really excels. I can give Mara a list of, like, say, some of the apps, but again, I guess the person who asked the question, are they still here? Like, what is there something specific that you're looking for in recording when you're looking for another platform? Just because that kind of determines what the recommendation.
Yes, I think they are. If you could, I think Elizabeth, if you could add in the chat any other specific information.
That'll be helpful.
A working platform that includes succession planting and crop rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very, very good one. I use a spreadsheet for my crop plan. Crop planning and succession planting is not part of Farming Concrete, but that's a very good question. Actually, it's a question that I get a lot from a lot of gardeners when they come back and say, this is what I would like to see on Farming Concrete. It's something to consider, to think about, and to see if the platform could be upgraded to do that, but I'm not making any promises. I'm not a programmer, so that would be something that we would have to investigate. But I wish there was a better program out there for crop planning other than Excel. Seriously.
And Mara, you're going to send out did I read correctly in the chat that you're going to resend the PDF as well?
Yeah, so I'll send the PDF in a follow-up email, and
Okay.
we do have some crop planning resources that I can include there as well.
And I can add, like, I know there were a few apps that had some succession planting in there, so I can do a little list and include it in the handout.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, so if you send those to me, I can send them out to everyone.
Because that's why I was asking, because sometimes it's like they'll have one thing but not the other, and so I can at least note what they're good for.
So I think we have time for just one more question, and there is one more question.
Is there an option to upload images, like a scan copies of past garden maps, irrigation maps?
There was no option to upload images. I don't remember. I just know that it pins your location of your garden using whatever is online, and shows the exact location of your garden once you register online.
Yeah, I would have to go back and check, but I think you could hack one of the metrics to do that instead. Like, I think I think Beauty in the Garden had photos involved.
Yes.
Yeah, Beauty in the Garden was like a photo upload, so you could just decide that Beauty in the Garden is actually your like annual map upload. If you want to be uploading photos, so that would just be up to you. So thank you everyone for coming tonight, and thank you so much, Heather. Thank you so much, Sheryll. This was a really wonderful workshop and a really good conversation. I appreciate everyone who participated in the chat. for sharing all of your ideas and your questions and your knowledge. That was really fun. We hope to see you at future GreenThumb webinars.